Hello, good evening. Hope everyone is great. We are going to dive in just a moment. And today we're going to be looking at vulnerability and surrender, which are people's least favorite things to talk about. Yay! If you are watching live, please feel free to comment or ask questions at any point. If you are watching the replay and want to ask, then please do, but just tag me in the comments to make sure that I see it. And if you want to send me a private message, then send it through the page. That's absolutely fine. I'm happy to connect that way. Yeah, so we're gonna dive in here. So the reason why I wanted to talk about this is because there's been a lot of fun stuff happening with people the last couple of weeks. And a lot of resistance coming up for people, a lot of resistance around things being as they are, a lot of resistance to changes that are happening around them or in their lives. And a lot of resistance to let me find the words. A lot of resistance to allowing, to receiving, and to going with the flow of those things. So remember, we get what we're asking for on some level. We always get what we're asking for. And if we ask for change, if we ask for things to shift, then they start to happen. So we're going to talk tonight a little bit about vulnerability and surrender and the ways that that can benefit you. And if you feel resistant to these topics, then you should listen. Because people really struggle with these ideas and struggle to implement them in a tangible, real, grounded way. And that's actually what creates the most of the problems in your life. Because if you really allow yourself, if you learn how to be vulnerable and you learn how to surrender, life gets much easier. So I know we talked over the last couple of weeks about things like being in flow, allowing yourself to receive. And vulnerability and, hey Shuna, vulnerability and surrender are huge components of that. So I feel like with these two things, if you can really learn and understand this, then you can start to receive and manifest and create and all that other fun stuff. These for me are the foundation. So let's talk about vulnerability first. So in terms of vulnerability, some good stuff. So when I start to talk to classes, hey, Julia. Oh, hello from India, Julia. Hopefully everything's going well. Hey, Deborah. So vulnerability. When I start to talk about this stuff in classes or with clients, people get, their stuff comes up. It's so scary. So what I want to say though is vulnerability is simply an openness. And for all of y'all that are wanting love and affection and care and support and money or income, you've got to have openness. And what happens so much of the time is that people are asking for things. They're wanting to create things or manifest things. But if you're not open to receiving what you're asking for, you don't get to have it. So vulnerability is a core component of you living your life and living the life that you want to be living. And if you are not allowing yourself to be vulnerable, if you're not open to that possibility, then you sabotage yourself. You stop yourself from having the things that you're working really hard to create. So if that is resonating with anybody, take a nice deep breath and allow that resistance to start to resolve. Hey, Fran. Yeah. That's a big shift already. Good. So vulnerability means that you let your guard down and that you stop investing so much time and energy and effort into protecting yourself. I know that's going to trigger some fear. So here's the thing, protection, all the things that we do to protect ourselves are fear-based responses. And if it is a fear-based response, if it is something that we're doing out of fear, we're choosing out of fear, it's not in alignment, and it will drain energy. It's draining for you. It's exhausting. It's tiring. It's not fun. So on some level, you may keep doing it because you think it's safer in some way. But the reality is that you're going to feel like shit while you do it. So here's the truth. You are way more powerful and stronger than any pain or suffering or trauma that you have endured in the past, present, or future combined for all lifetimes, all dimensions. You're stronger than all that. Your fear of those things will make you make bad decisions and will cause you to make choices that stop you from having what you actually want to have. Does that make sense? Is this resonating for anybody? Oh, good. Yeah, it's just your fear of fear and your fear of pain and suffering that is creating the drama and the sabotage and the shit that's happening in your life that you don't want to happen. That's it. You complicate it for yourself. We're good at that sometimes. So if you actually allowed yourself to be vulnerable, if you allowed yourself to be open, you would spend a lot less time putting up barriers and walls. And here's the thing. When you start to put up barriers and walls, do you know what the people around you do? They do the same thing. Or they get into this energetic, subconscious mindset that there's a battle and there's a war. So they either run away, they freeze, they build defenses, or they attack. So if you're putting out to the world and to the people around you that you're afraid and that you need to hide away, then part of them goes, okay, well, what's going on here? And how am I responding to this? So we create a lot of drama and we create a lot of stuff because of our fears, because of things that have happened in the past or that we're afraid may repeat or could possibly happen at some point, maybe. It's a lot of effort and energy that just isn't necessary. Yeah. So we complicate it for ourselves, right? So for those of you who have built a bunch of walls, who've put a bunch of barriers in place that don't need to be there, if you'd like to take in a nice deep breath and allow that to start to soften and resolve, that would be great. Breathe into that. Really breathe into that. Yeah. And so here's the thing. If you're wanting love, you got to be vulnerable. If you're wanting support, you've got to be vulnerable. If you're wanting affection or connection or any of the good stuff in life, really, there's got to be a willingness to be open and authentic and honest about who you really are so that people can connect with that and you can experience what you really want to experience. Does that make sense? So your vulnerability is your key to receiving all the things that you want in life, but it's also the key to you being who you really are. Because if you're afraid to show who you really are, if you're afraid to let that be seen or known, again, you just stop yourself from having everything you want to have, from creating whatever you want to have. Does that make sense? Yeah, so does anybody have any questions? Does anything come up around vulnerability or kind of the barriers or the walls or anything? If there's anything you want to share or ask, then please go for it now. Because in a minute we're going to move on to surrender and really trigger your stuff. Yeah. So what I want you to do is close your eyes and take in a couple nice deep breaths. And I want you to feel into your body, into your energy, anywhere you feel resistance. where you feel resistance, where you feel fear. And just notice where that is. Maybe in a few different places. Maybe all over. Just feel into that. So this represents how much of your life you are trying to keep a tight hold on. You're really trying to control. You're really trying to keep yourself safe from. That you're really fighting, that you're really resisting. So take a couple nice deep breaths. And let's start to allow that to soften. Hey, Genty. So here's what I want to share with you. And when you are looking at issues around vulnerability, being open, if you are not allowing yourself to be vulnerable, it's because you are lacking trust. And the reason why you lack trust is because you are having a hard time recognizing the truth. You're avoiding or resisting the truth. All of this stuff comes with your resistance. It's all your fears that get in the way of this. It's all the stuff you build up and make more complicated. So I'm not saying this so you'll get upset with yourself or mad at yourself, because we all do this. But it means that when you start to recognize it, then you can change it. You can allow it to resolve. So I want you to think about trust and what your trust issues are. Who are the people you struggle to trust? What are the situations where you struggle to trust? What are the scenarios, the stories been in your past where you felt you got burned or taken advantage of or manipulated or whatever? Insert whatever word fits there. And feel it in your body. So you might have a certain person or scenario that comes to mind. So here's the thing. We get really good at blaming other people because of what we're feeling or experiencing. And it's really easy to blame somebody else for breaking your trust, for lying to you, for being dishonest, for taking advantage, for not treating you with integrity. But here's the thing as well. If you really listen to your intuition, then you would know not to trust them. So the only reason that you feel hurt or in pain or suffering is because you ignored yourself. You ignored the truth when it was there. And part of you is trying to remind you that you need to listen to yourself more. Hi, Arlita. That's okay. Glad you came. Does that make sense? So when you really allow yourself to know what's happening in a situation, because here's the thing, yeah, there are times where you may be speaking to a person and they may not be trustworthy. Not everybody is going to be 100% honest with you all the time. That's okay. But if you really listen to yourself, if you listen to your intuition, you'll know that they're not being trustworthy and you won't trust them. So this kind of blanket all or nothing trust thing, which people get into, it doesn't work because there are degrees. And it may be times, hey Mary, that's okay. There may be times where you listen to your intuition and say, no, I don't think either they're not going to be able to follow through, something may happen. You know, sometimes people have the best of intentions. If you listen to your intuition, you'll know that they're not really going to be able to deliver this. Does that make sense? So all that hurt and pain where you thought that your trust was misplaced or wrong or taken advantage of, breathe into that and allow that to resolve on all levels. And really, actually, if you've got a lot of trust issues, it's because you don't trust yourself. And again, that may be because you didn't listen to your intuition. You knew what was going to happen and you didn't listen to it. And so now you don't trust yourself because you feel like you got it wrong in the past. So all that stuff around you not trusting yourself anymore, breathe into that and allow that to resolve too. Yeah, that feels better. Because here's the thing, you can always change your behaviors. You can always change your decisions. You can always change the ways you process things. You don't have to keep doing it the same over and over again. You can learn from the things that you've done in the past that haven't worked very well or weren't the best decisions for you. That's the whole point of life, is to be able to learn and evolve. As long as you're evolving, you're fine. Keep doing that. So if there are any questions about kind of truth and trust, let me know. Go ahead and type those in. And then we're going to move on to surrender. Okay. Cool. So let's talk about surrender. So about a couple weeks ago, I'll tell you is a great way to do this. So when I am healing, when I'm doing healing stuff and working on myself, it's really easy. You know, for those of you who are healers and you avoid working on yourself, it's so easy to like avoid it, because you sit down and work on yourself and you're like, oh, I'll just go put on some laundry, or I'll just go clean the bathroom. You know, like the stuff you've been avoiding doing for weeks, you'll go do because you don't want to go and do your stuff. So I take a big bubble bath, a big salt bath, because I know I'll stay in it and I'll actually do the work then. So if that works for you, go, yeah, do it. It's miraculous. So yeah, I think a couple of weeks ago, I was just kind of tuning in and to get a sense of what would be good for me to look at. And surrender is the word that kept coming up over and over and over again. And yeah, surrender is kind of an uncomfortable word. Because especially if you like to control or like to have control, or, you know, that illusion of control, because control doesn't really exist. You feel like you want to hang on to that, then surrender sounds like a scary thing, because it sounds like you give up everything. So I spent like an hour just going through everything in my life, my feelings, my emotions, yeah, everything. And saying out loud, I surrender this, I surrender this, I surrender this. And there were definitely a few things that I struggled to get the words out. So I had to kind of feel into my resistance there of why I wanted to not surrender, why I didn't want to let go of my hold on that. And man, I felt really different after that. It was a relief, and but in a good way. I just felt like I shed a lot of layers, and it felt really good, because if you're holding on so tight to your life, if you're holding on so tight to expectations or how things are supposed to be, or how you're supposed to feel, or the way things are supposed to work out, that's a lot of burden. That's a lot to carry. You'll feel really stuck. You'll feel really crap. And surrender for me is the ultimate expression of trust. When you really trust yourself, when you really trust love, when you really trust the choices that you're making, when you really trust that you are making the very best choices that are in alignment with the highest potential and version of you, when you really surrender, that is when you open the floodgates to receiving. And that's when life starts to click into place. If you're holding on too tight, you delay things, you make it hard, you make it difficult, it becomes really sticky and messy. So surrender is that ultimate letting go, so that you can just allow, so that you can receive. And again, it's not always an easy process. I definitely had to work through some stuff, and I'm sure there's still some stuff to work through with that. But I felt very different afterwards. So what I want you to do is close your eyes. Oh yeah, Jinty. So Jinty's saying I struggle with surrendering, protecting myself, even though I know the protection is actually the cause of the life problems. Yeah, so that's kind of the circular thing. You want to feel safe, and the protection makes you feel safe, but it stops you from having the great stuff. So everybody close your eyes and take in a couple nice deep breaths. And I want you to think about the thing in your life that you're holding on the most tightly to. What are you just holding on to so tight? You're either trying so hard to make it work, so hard to make it okay. You're trying so hard to change it. You just feel that energy of tension and the grip and the tightness in it. So that can be relationships, it can be jobs, it can be money, it can be health, it can be anything really. So I want you to feel that in your body. I want you to feel that resistance and that tightness. You can just start to breathe into it. And as you're breathing in, I want you to identify the emotions that are there. The positive, the negative. And as you identify those emotions, say to yourself, in your head or out loud, I surrender. I surrender my anger. I surrender frustration. I surrender hopelessness. I surrender hopefulness. I surrender joy. I surrender expectation. I surrender anger. I surrender resentment. I surrender protection. I surrender safety. I surrender what is mine. I surrender what is owed to me. I surrender my demands. I surrender what I have to have. I surrender my needs. I surrender my wants. I surrender my desires. I surrender my fear. I surrender my fear. I surrender all fear. I surrender the past. I surrender the future. I surrender the present. I surrender perfection. I surrender confusion. I surrender having to know. I surrender not knowing. I surrender. I surrender. I surrender love. I surrender being loved. I surrender understanding. I surrender being understood. I surrender freedom. I surrender control. I surrender. I surrender my beliefs. I surrender belief. I surrender emotions. I surrender my emotions. I surrender. I surrender outcomes. I surrender results. I surrender success. I surrender failure. I surrender mediocrity. I surrender excellence. I surrender resistance. I surrender anger. I surrender frustration. I surrender anxiety. I surrender panic. I surrender calm. I surrender peace. I surrender comfort. So keep breathing in and out. Whatever comes to mind, positive or negative, without a judgment, surrender it. Doesn't mean you're going to give it up forever. It just means you let go of your attachment to it. And it means you let go of your definition of it. Your definition of it may not be the best definition of it. You may think you know what peace is. There might be more for you. I surrender peace. I surrender order. I surrender chaos. I surrender hatred. I surrender being right. I surrender being wrong. I surrender everything I believe to be me. I surrender my labels. I surrender other people's labels. I surrender identity. I surrender the roles I play. I surrender the roles that other people play. I surrender obligation. I surrender limitation. Oh, Genty, that's awesome. I surrender being spiritual. I surrender being a good girl or a good person. I surrender being a bad person. I surrender being non-spiritual. So think through your labels, the words you use to associate with yourself. The good ones, the bad ones, whatever you judge. I surrender. I surrender being a parent. I surrender being a friend. I surrender being a sibling. I surrender being a leader. I surrender being a follower. I surrender being strong. I surrender being powerful. I surrender being vulnerable. I surrender trust. I surrender truth. Oh, Fran. Yeah. I surrender being good. I surrender being great. I surrender being shit. I surrender being fucked up. I surrender being fucked over. I surrender being a victim. I surrender being a winner. I surrender being the accuser. I surrender being the accused. I surrender conflict. I surrender drama. I surrender fighting. I surrender the war. I surrender the battles. I surrender being perfect. I surrender being imperfect. I surrender being a mess. I surrender being a work of art. I surrender being human. I surrender being divine. I surrender divinity. I surrender purpose. I surrender eternity. I surrender a moment. Thank you, Deborah. I surrender holding. I surrender resistance. I surrender surrender. Let's take a few deep breaths. Genty, thank you. I surrender healing. I surrender being healed. I surrender health. Like he's going to surrender too. Oh, Mary, I surrender patience. That's a good one. I surrender being impatient. I surrender demands. So again, feel into your body. Whatever emotions, whatever words are coming up for you. I surrender. And if there's fear coming up as you're saying these or thinking these, that's okay. Just breathe into it. Just a little bit of resistance. I surrender. I surrender. I surrender expectations. I surrender need. I surrender. I surrender focus. I surrender clarity. I surrender confusion. I surrender lack of clarity. I surrender. So taking a couple nice deep breaths and open your eyes. If you feel like you want to continue this now or another time, please do. Again, I recommend a bubble bath. It's a great time to do it. But if anybody wants to share anything that came up for them or what feels different, that'd be great. Some big healing. Yeah, it was big. Loki agrees. So, I mean, this is one of these things that feels like a simple exercise, but it's really profound. It's really powerful. And you'll surrender what you're ready at the time. I would encourage you to maybe be open to surrendering things even if you don't feel like you're ready to. It's a good practice to get into. Just challenging yourself a little bit or encouraging yourself to say the things. Yeah. Again, these can be all facets of your life. This can be physical possessions in life. It can be, your mental health, your emotional health, whatever's going on for you. But when you make that declaration of I surrender, then you allow yourself open to possibility and opportunity. So what that means is that it's great to plan. It's great to have an idea of what you want and to get clear on what aligns for you. But if you're so set on how it has to happen, on what it's supposed to look like, on how it's supposed to come, you stop yourself again. People want to be certain because it makes them feel safer. But if you are not allowing yourself to be open to other possibilities or opportunities, then you stop things from coming to you. You stop them from being created. So the more you surrender, the more you allow yourself to be open to magic and miracles and spontaneity and awesome surprises and fun and all kinds of stuff. Arleta, I just felt dizzy. Let's just shift. Good. Maybe ground a little bit. Vanessa, that was awesome. Felt lots of significant ones. Feeling lighter and more peaceful. Perfect. Fran, that was powerful. Awesome. Genty, your cat loved it. Good. Helping with huge shifts in the gut. That is awesome. Harvey, I lost the tightness around my diaphragm. Feel lighter. That is awesome. 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 So again, this is really simple, but it does take a degree of courage for you to do this. It takes a degree of courage for you to look at the stuff that you are really holding on to. And sometimes it can be simple. Sometimes the things that are subtle, it might be very subtle. It might be little habits that aren't great, but that you're still kind of going, oh, it's not that bad. It's okay. I know that when I was doing this, it's so funny. As I was going through this, I was looking at habits and expectations and things, and I started looking at my thing around food, and it was that I surrender sugar, and I could feel this resistance in me. And again, I don't have loads of sugar, but there was obviously part of me that's like, oh no, I still want to keep that right now. So so it's just interesting to see what comes up for you, and and just to play with that, and to really have that intention of, if there are things in my life that are stopping me from having the life that I want to have, the life that I want to live, from feeling the way that I want to feel, I surrender that. And I surrender even the good stuff, because it could be even better, or I could have it in a greater way. So so whatever you feel like you're holding on to, good or bad, you learn to surrender it. It can change a lot of things in your life. So if there's any questions or anything you want to add about that, please go ahead and add now. That's a great one to do. Go take a bath. Sit there for like an hour. You'll feel great afterwards. Put some music on in the background. It's going to be amazing. So I'll if there's any last questions, go ahead and ask them. I'll share. I'll be back next week at the same time, 5 o'clock on Tuesday. I don't have a topic yet, so we'll see what comes up. Something that I am doing tomorrow evening, I'm going to start doing a Zoom webinar with the new moon each month. I'm going to try it for a few months and see how it goes. I've already got people signed up for this one, so even with short notice, there's people booking on. So I think it's going to be great. So my intention with this, it's a new moon ceremony. So we'll do it live, but if you can't do it live, then I'll send you the recording, so you'll still get to go through the process. And really, for me, this is an opportunity to create a spaciousness within you. So it's the surrendering stuff we're doing now, essentially. So it's to create a spaciousness within you, to do some healing and clearing, so that with the new moon, you can get clear on what you're wanting to create over the next few weeks or months. So March is kind of a funny month. There's a lot going on astrologically speaking. We've started Mercury retrograde today. So that may bring up some fun stuff for you. So this is an opportunity for us to really sit and go into that. And I'm definitely going to do some karmic healing and some past life stuff, whatever's coming up for people. So I'm just going to transmit. I'm going to channel. So we will do some healing. We'll create a space for that. And then we will have an opportunity to start to call in the things that you are wanting to create, and just start to create that momentum and that flow for the things that you're wanting. And I'm going to do this every month if people are interested. And it seems like people are. So we're going to have fun. So that information is here on Facebook or on my website under the online tab, I think. Just another opportunity to connect. It's going to be fun. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. I can already feel the energy kind of building up for it. Jinty the cat's having so much fun tonight. Thank you too. Good. So Deborah's saying she's working with some deep wounds connected with the earth in a past life, and that's resolving. Great. That's awesome. I'm so glad. Yeah, that was fun. Cool. Well, I think that is it from me. So again, if there's anything you want to follow up with, you can comment here and tag me. Send me a private message to the page. But otherwise, have an amazing week. Hopefully, I'll connect with you tomorrow night for anybody who wants to do the new moon ceremony. Otherwise, I will see you next Tuesday. So have an awesome, amazing evening. Speak to you soon.